Blake Lively has reportedly withdrawn her lawsuit against Justin Baldoni after new information emerged that called aspects of her claims into question.
Anyway, as I said, today is the big day of Blake Lively's deposition.
The narrative surrounding one of Hollywood's biggest names appears to be shifting. Blake Lively has withdrawn her lawsuit against Justin Baldoni after months of highly publicized legal back and forth and intense media scrutiny. And the timing has raised eyebrows. Her decision came just before a scheduled deposition in which she would have been required to answer questions under oath. Critics argue that the withdrawal undermines the seriousness of her earlier claims, noting that recent court filings did not present the kind of supporting evidence many expected. Instead, observers say the case increasingly looked like a prolonged public relations battle rather than a straightforward legal dispute. What was anticipated as a major turning point in the legal saga has now led to a very different kind of reckoning, one that may reshape public perception of the entire conflict.
She's saying that it was because of the smear campaign that she did to herself.
Blake Lively's long-anticipated deposition date finally arrived. The moment many expected she'd have to step out from behind Instagram gloss and carefully curated public appearances to answer real questions under oath. Instead, she sidestepped it entirely. Critics say no one should be shocked. This is the same actress who was reportedly absent from her own film set for extended periods, citing everything from family issues to weather delays. Had the deposition proceeded, the legal process would have required Blake to explain a series of apparent inconsistencies. Observers were already asking, how do you publicly label someone as dangerous, yet privately acknowledge that the situation wasn't that bad and that you never wanted to go public in the first place? For many, the math simply wasn't adding up. And while Ryan Reynolds' Deadpool persona may be bulletproof, some argue the real-life reputations surrounding the franchise are taking hits. The memory of the Deadpool and Wolverine premiere in July 2024 still lingers for those who believe the tension was noticeable even then.
She also said that she never wanted to go public with this information, meaning that she's contradicting herself when she said that Baldoni was a danger.
At an industry event packed with Hollywood insiders, Ryan Reynolds made a remark that immediately set off shockwaves, publicly referring to Justin Baldoni in language that many observers said bordered on defamatory. It wasn't whispered behind closed doors or filed quietly in a complaint. It was said out loud, on camera, as if the entire room were part of some unrehearsed, high-stakes improv routine. When critics pushed back, Reynolds' reported defense was essentially that he was exercising his right to speak freely, as though potentially damaging someone's reputation were simply another part of his comedic brand. The comments sparked rapid fallout. Not long after, Baldoni's agency, WME, severed ties with him. Then came a separate layer of drama. Leaked audio, its authenticity still debated, purportedly capturing former WME CEO Ari Emanuel expressing that he had placed more trust in Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds than in Baldoni, despite growing public scrutiny over inconsistencies in Blake's earlier claims. To many watching from the sidelines, it looked like a case of industry favoritism, with Baldoni caught in the undertow. Legal analysts following the situation have suggested that, if these reports and inconsistencies were ever substantiated in court, the combination of a high-profile public statement and conflicting narratives could potentially strengthen arguments around actual malice, the threshold required to prove defamation against a public figure.
She never believed that. And what she's saying now, that she got all this support from other victims when her experience wasn't that bad and she never wanted to go public with it.
In defamation law, actual malice is the golden ticket, and some observers believe recent developments may have pushed the saga closer to that territory. Critics say Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds, backed by powerful PR networks and deep Hollywood connections, seemed confident their narrative would go unchallenged. But that confidence appears to be cracking. What really sent shockwaves through the discourse was Blake's own public comments. In several interviews, now scrutinized frame by frame, she reportedly acknowledged that what happened on set wasn't that serious, suggesting the supposed smear campaign afterward felt more damaging than the initial incident itself. To many watching, that admission directly undercut the emotional foundation of the story that had fueled months of headlines. The optics were brutal, Ryan making explosive public accusations, Blake downplaying the severity of the situation, and the internet scrambling to make sense of the contradictions unfolding in real time. Commentators have compared it to trying to solve a puzzle with pieces from two different boxes, and somehow both boxes are labeled perfect Hollywood marriage.
And that put Ryan Reynolds in big trouble with his state.
Blake didn't stop there. In later comments, she reportedly suggested she'd seen far worse in Hollywood than anything that happened on the It Ends With Us set. And that left many observers asking, if that's true, why direct so much energy toward Baldoni specifically? The narrative just wasn't lining up. Critics have been quick to point out the contrast between these recent statements and Blake's polished empowerment persona. Rewind to the 2018 Met Gala. She delivered an impassioned speech about independence and identity, declaring that no man defines her. Cameras flashed, the crowd applauded. The moment was treated like a feminist cultural reset. Fast forward to the present, and commentators online are calling the irony almost cinematic. The same actress celebrated for her empowerment messaging is now being accused, fairly or not, of leaning on questionable harassment claims whenever her public image takes a hit. To many, it feels less like a principled stand and more like the plot of a reality show, only instead of scripted drama, the storyline revolves around legal threats and media narratives. Critics argue that her empowerment branding has started to look flimsy, more like a Hollywood set backdrop than a genuine philosophy. When her most recent film underperformed, the timing of the renewed accusation struck some as suspicious, prompting online voices to say she had once again reached for the victim angle.
She said that the smear campaign was much worse than the actually alleged SA.
Why take responsibility for professional setbacks when you can make sweeping accusations and hope no one notices the plot holes? That's the question many critics are asking. To them, the disconnect between Blake's feminist branding and the optics of this situation is impossible to ignore. The entire legal spectacle surrounding her, according to online commentators, was driven almost entirely by men behind the scenes. And her loudest public defender? Ryan Reynolds, whose commentary often sounded less like legal argument and more like playground taunts. So much for standing on her own 2 feet. Observers joked that Blake went from "no man defines me" to "Ryan, handle this for me" at lightning speed. When it came time to present actual evidence, insiders claim her team didn't deliver much. Instead of producing solid proof, they reportedly issued sweeping document demands, pulling in everyone from corporate executives to low-level employees who probably wanted nothing more than to clock in, do their jobs, and avoid getting sucked into Hollywood drama. And then there was the curveball, a subpoena aimed at Justin Baldoni's health coach. Yes, a health coach, which sparked endless online jokes about probiotics somehow being part of a grand conspiracy against Blake. Critics said it felt like a storyline penned by a writer who'd run out of ideas.
And he said that he could say that because it was freedom of speech and he believed him to be a predator.
Observers say the California judge wasn't having any of Blake's procedural gymnastics, and Judge Lehman reportedly shut down the attempt to move jurisdictions almost instantly. Online commentators joked that even the courts have grown tired of Blake, shopping for venues the way she shops for couture. While Blake's team was issuing sprawling document demands to people with zero apparent connection to the dispute, Wayfair, one of the entities dragged into the situation, has reportedly been quietly cooperating and pushing back in a far more conventional manner. According to industry sources, their forensic specialists have been sifting through emails, texts, and internal servers, with a full set of materials scheduled to be turned over by July 1st, 2025. Critics say the contrast is glaring. While Blake is accused of weaving increasingly convoluted theories involving wellness coaches and supplement routines, Wayfair appears to be preparing a comprehensive data release that some believe could challenge key elements of her narrative. Wayfair's position, based on statements attributed to individuals close to the company, is straightforward. They believe the forthcoming documents will show that many of the allegations against them, retaliation, misconduct, or involvement in any kind of campaign, are unfounded.
Ari Emanuel said that he always trusted Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds, and he was basically saying that F Justin Baldoni.
Blake's entire PR image, critics say, hinges on this idea of some grand social media manipulation campaign, a narrative where Wayfair staff, wellness coaches, and maybe even the night janitor are supposedly part of a coordinated effort to undermine her via Instagram posts and anonymous leaks. But as many observers point out, she hasn't produced evidence to prove any of it. Just theories, insinuations, and what detractors call a chronic victim narrative. Meanwhile, on Justin Baldoni's side, his June 23, 2025 deadline to file a second amended complaint passed with no public filing. Legal analysts have noted something important. Under certain federal rules, you can't always amend your complaint and pursue an appeal simultaneously, which has led some commentators to speculate that Justin is simply playing the long game, tightening strategy behind closed doors while Blake burns through headlines in real time. If anything, supporters argue that Baldoni appears uninterested in dragging the process into the spectacle-level theatrics that critics associate with Blake's public strategy. No PR stunts, no viral soundbites, just patience. A stark contrast to the chaos swirling on the other side.
Is that Blake Lively herself said that this wasn't really bad. And that put Ryan Reynolds.
Meanwhile, Baldoni's supporters haven't budged. Industry colleagues, friends, and people who've worked with him continue to speak up, calling what's happening a full-on character takedown. And as Blake's narrative keeps springing new leaks, that support only gets louder. Blake's own fan base, on the other hand, seems to be grappling with the possibility that their feminist icon may have been leaning a little too heavily on sympathy points. The media ecosystem has started melting down around her, and not in the flattering, red carpet glow way. Take Megan Twohey's New York Times podcast. On paper, that should have been Blake's comfort zone, a polished, journalist-approved space where celebrities tell their stories while hosts nod responsibly and never push too hard. But instead of providing the PR reset Blake needed, the whole thing reportedly blew up in her face. Rather than reinforcing her narrative, Twohey highlighted the contradictions in Blake's timeline with almost athletic precision. She pointed out what a lot of people have been saying for months. This never resembled some towering Hollywood misconduct scandal. It sounded more like standard behind-the-scenes friction, the kind that happens when creative visions clash, egos inflate, and someone isn't getting what they want. Critics argue that Blake has been trying to retroactively inflate ordinary workplace tension into harassment claims, and the strategy simply didn't land. Instead of polishing her image, she torched it. Instead of gaining sympathy, she handed the internet a catalog of mixed messages and regular people, the same fans who once cheered Blake on every red carpet, are now openly questioning the contradictions, the shifting narratives, and the courtroom maneuvers. Many say they're done with the performance. Each inconsistent statement, each sprawling subpoena request, each high-gloss media appearance has chipped away at her credibility. The case looks weaker, her public image more fragile than ever. Blake Lively built her entire brand on being effortlessly likable. The golden hair, the couture fashion moments, the picture-perfect family, the polished girl-next-door aura. For years, that carefully managed persona acted as a force field against criticism. But that protection is evaporating. As her lawsuit falters, the question hanging over Hollywood is whether she can recover from this. The industry adores a comeback story, but some insiders are whispering that this one may be too steep a climb. Critics argue she wasn't merely caught in mixed messaging. They believe she appeared to be crafting a narrative that cast her as the wounded heroine while painting others in the worst possible light. And those optics are proving hard to ignore. The industry is paying close attention. Projects that once would have lined up for her are reportedly slowing down. Brand partners are said to be taking a second look. Blake had it all: fame, influence, public goodwill. And now, some commentators fear she's put all of that at risk through a combination of missteps and overexposure. She wanted to be the protagonist in a Hollywood redemption story. Instead, online commentators say she's becoming a cautionary example, proof of what happens when a public image is stretched too far and too thin. A fall from grace unfolding in real time, one disputed claim, one high-stakes headline, one PR stumble at a time. The house of cards, they argue, has finally collapsed. And many believe Hollywood won't view Blake Lively the same way again. Stay tuned to Riveted for ongoing coverage. The courtroom chapter may be closing, but the fallout is just beginning.